Hey everybody. Type in the chat if you can hear me, if you can see the game, and then we'll do a little bit of testing because I added a couple different add-ins for OBS for like switching between windows and stuff automatically because I want to show you stuff like track documents and things like that. Hey Radanju, Southeastern Mass Railfanner, what's going on guys? I'm not gonna do the webcam today, just not feeling it. I want to get a new webcam anyway that's higher quality. Alright, so as everybody's joining, just let me know if you can hear me and if you can see the screen and all that. Like I said, we'll do a little bit more testing in a little bit. Nice, thanks, Donju. Alright. Now tell me if you can see me switching between all these windows. We got an Excel spreadsheet here that I'll be showing you guys about. Got TS tools, because I'm going to go over some track rule stuff. And I also have some track charts that I'll show you guys how to read and interpret and how to apply the values to the game. It looks like everything transitioned properly. I'm clicking on these windows and it's automatically switching scenes, which means this plugin is working properly. Super helpful. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Perfect. Super excited about this new format. Excellent. Thank you, Redunju. If anybody else can provide feedback, that would be most welcome. And then we can start talking about the purpose of this stream today and what we're going to be doing exactly. So right at 4 o'clock, we can jump right into it. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good learning experience for a lot of people, especially people who want to make real world routes or are hesitant about route building. This might be a good icebreaker for you. But until then, feel free to get up, grab a drink, grab a snack. You don't have to stick around for the whole first half hour if you don't want to. It's gonna fly around a little bit. You turn off Google Maps. I don't want to use too many tiles. Because I've barely looked at what Evan's laid so far. But apparently, let me check the map. Apparently, he's made it all the way to Philly. So this is where I ended the trek for the route that I made. That you guys hopefully all have purchased now. So this is where I ended, and I advised Evan to just stay at the same terrain height, just lay level track all the way down. So it looks like we keep going north. It looks like he made it to not Penn Station, Philadelphia 30th Street Station. So we'll see. Captain Ace. Is that you, Evan? Hey man, how you doing? Redonji says, I honestly know the basics for not limited track laying with Google Maps, but I cannot stand the bugs that make this editor unbearable to use. Yeah, I mean it's painful to use this editor. But it's a lot better with 64-bit, to be honest. If you can use 64-bit, definitely do it because it doesn't remove the memory leaks that are happening. If you use the tools a certain way, it's still going to crash the game regardless of how much memory you have, but it gives you a lot more time before the game decides to crash. Yeah, I know, Evan, you're probably extremely busy with life right now. School, and then trying to work a lot on this, and then you're doing some Springfield line stuff too, right? So it's a lot, man. You're taking on a lot. I don't want you to get burnt out. While we wait, just comment on the stream quality, the quality of my microphone, all that kind of stuff. Just gonna test again, switching between these windows. So we have TS tools, formerly known as RW tools, because I'm gonna be showing you guys some track rule stuff. This radius of curvature spreadsheet that I made, which just converts the degrees of curvature in track documents to meters. That's used by the game. Super useful. I can send that to you guys if you want. And finally, track charts. How to interpret them, how to use them to the best of your ability in real world routes. Yeah, Redanju, when you're making a route, definitely save often and make backups too, because we've had several people that have made routes and um, they didn't make backups and the route got corrupted somehow. That happens sometimes with the editor, like the track data will just get corrupted and you'll have invisible tracks and a bunch of crap like that. So don't just save often manually via F2, but also make full folder backups. And I make a batch file to do that. I'll just run this batch file. It'll just zip up the root folder automatically, give it a name based on the time I saved it, and it'll just get archived on like a external hard drive or something. I did that frequently for the Washington to Baltimore route because I did not want to lose my any progress that I made. So some days I'd have like 5 backups because I'd work on it in the morning, and then I'd save and take a break, make a backup, work on it again mid afternoon, afterward take a break, make a backup. Luckily, I never had to use any of the backups because it didn't get corrupted. Everything worked out pretty nicely, but it's there as a safety cushion in case you need it. All right, cool. Evan, so you're working on Mill River to Springfield, and then you're going to come back to this. Yeah, so hopefully after this, you'll know where you need to continue off, what you need to fix, because there is still quite a bit of stuff that you need to learn about track laying, and I don't want you to get discouraged or anything. You're getting a lot better. You're getting a lot better, and you're better than most track layers out there, to be honest. Um, and this route's not easy. Like especially if we go back here over by Bay Interlocking, Bay has some pretty crazy stuff going on, where all the tracks just decide to do their own thing, and then you got to make them reconverge. And I've taught you some of that kind of stuff before, but and it's difficult. It's not easy by any means. Let me show you Bay for those who are unfamiliar with the track layout at Bay. Right here. Was it Bay, River, and Point? All those interlockings over there. So you come out of this curve, and track 3 goes its own way with its own curvature values and everything. Track 2 and track 1. And they just do their own thing. And then they all come back together at different times too. And then, actually, Evan, you did a pretty good job. Not gonna lie there. The welds are still a problem, but It looks like you got the geometry down pretty good there. We'll take a look at it with the track documents as reference, though, just to compare. Yeah, and good on you for taking on a project of this difficulty. I know it's not easy, and you could just wing it, and yeah, it would be passable, but it wouldn't you wouldn't really feel good about releasing something like that. So it's good to take it slow, be precise, double check your work, and I'll go through all that today. It should be a really good learning experience. Don't feel bad at all. You're kicking ass, man. You're absolutely kicking ass. Uh, yeah, I got some. We got time to answer some other questions. Radanju. I know it's sort of unrelated, but how can I make sharp curves for light rail styled routes? Yard doesn't curve like I want it to. Ah, I actually have the track rule up right now to show you. So let me go over to TS Tools. So, in order to create curves that have a custom radius of curvature, really, really sharp curves, you're going to need to modify your track rule. So, in here, there's a section called mainline track limits, yard track limits, blah, blah, blah. All these values. So based on the type of track you're laying, mainline, yard, passenger, freight, you're going to see right here a number called minimum radius. Now that is the sharpest curve that you can possibly lay with that track setting. So yard, the minimum radius of curvature track you can lay is 75 meters, which I'm guessing isn't tight enough for your um, use case. So what you do is in TS Tools, you would extract, well, I mean, first you'd find your routes AP file, which is like a zip file. It's in your Steam folder. You can dig for it and find it. Once you find the assets for the route, the AP file, you can use a program like 7-zip to unzip it, and then it exposes the entire file structure, all of the individual folders. I don't know if you can see this text. Actually, I can't really blow it up right now. But it would be in the rail network folder of the routes assets, then the track rules folder, and then there's a bin file with the track rule. And when you open that in TS Tools, this is what gets exposed, all of the text that defines the track rule. So what you'll do is you'll change the 75 in this case, maybe to something like 25. Save it, reopen the game, and then you'll be able to lay a much sharper curve. All right? And any changes you make to the track rule doesn't matter because you can still publish the route to the workshop. You're not publishing the modified track rule. You're just modifying the track rule to serve your purposes of laying proper track at the time. Going back to the default track rule isn't going to change whatever track you laid. Evan's asking, I'm watching this from my computer right now. Do you think it would be good for me to boot up Railworks and load the route? No, I don't feel like you could pay enough attention and then follow along. Um, Maybe afterward you could rewatch the video and then follow along. But for now, I just try to soak up as much information as you can and ask as many questions to me as you can while you have me here. That's just what I would recommend. But you should watch it on your computer because you'll probably see much better quality compared to your phone. Yeah, Radanju, the live stream is getting archived on YouTube on my channel. So you could be able to go back and watch it at any time. So yeah, that's actually a really good question, and I hope a lot of people learned something about track rules from that. It's going to keep following the track a little bit. We start here. This is milepost 93. So Evan, you laid all the way to Philly, most of this mainline track. Obviously no secondary track. We're just talking mainline here, right, buddy? Okay. You said you're building a new computer right now, trying to find an RTX 3070. Good luck, man. Availability is complete shit right now, and it's been shit since the launch. I would save your money. It's a terrible, terrible time to buy a graphics card, even a 20 series card. It's a terrible time to buy. You'd think that 20 series cards would be rather cheap right now because people are trying to sell their old stuff to upgrade to a 30 series card, but that's not even really the case. It's ridiculous. Try to scrape by with what you have right now if you can. Maybe by like the middle of the year, things will have settled down nicely and they'll have the proper supply of cards to where people aren't going to be scalping to get so much more money than MSRP. It's pretty cool, man. Does this track just end suddenly? Oh, I'm assuming it rejoins. Wait a minute, what? What's going on with this track? Oh, okay. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, terrain height's constant. Thank you for taking my recommendation. It's so much easier to lay precise track on a flat surface. No, that's fine. We can always rejoin that later. It'll just take a little while, but we can rejoin that track to this tangent. That's fine. Let me turn off the overlay. I don't want to load too many tiles. This looks pretty good. It's weird though that I didn't create the switch point. Like the little motor. Oh, unless it's hidden underground here. No, it's not. Let me see if I split that and then re-weld if it creates the junction. There we go. It's all good, man. Oh yeah, you had another section here where the tracks split off and then you get them to come back together nicely. Good job there. That looks... Did you try super elevating or something? I'm seeing a visible gap there. Oh yeah, you did try super elevating. Okay. I don't know why it's split like that. You did use easements, right, for everything? That shouldn't be splitting like that. Okay. No, that's cool. This one seemed to be okay. Oh wait, no. There is a visible bump. Oh, that was just because of the merging, I think. After having the tracks come back together. Oh, is this a bridge right here? Yes, it is. Which bridge is this? Gunpow? Because I'm not too familiar between Philly and Baltimore. Oh, Susquehanna. Okay, Susquehanna River Bridge. And this is Perry interlocking, right? All right, got it. Yep, Perryville. Nice. Oh, so this over here is this what was that interlocking called? Grace? Is this Grace? Grace. Okay. Got it. Okay. Making a lot of sense now. I think it's like the only area between Philly and Washington that uses the G heads, those tri-light signals that they use up here between New Haven and Boston. I like those. All right, while we wait for 4 o'clock to tick, let's just keep going north. Down the line, south is Oak. Oh yeah, that's right. Oak is the next one. But we're continuing north. Oh, I also have the Amtrak employee timetable up, just in case. Um, so we were just at Perry. Oh yeah, then you got Prince. Got it. So, did you keep track of how many hours you put into this? So how many miles is that? That's like, it's 93 track miles, right? It's quite a bit of track. I mean, laying it is pretty time consuming, but doing the gradients, all the ups and downs, and smoothing it out and testing it and ironing out any bumps and stuff, that's really time consuming as well, believe me. And we'll get there. Yeah, there's a lot of track, man. We're definitely not going to cover everything in this stream, but a fair deal. Any idea what's still going on with the welds? Like why there's so many welds? Like this right here, this grouping of 4 welds. I mean, stuff like this is just really confusing to me, and it's going to make it a lot harder to smooth out terrain in the end, because you see, for every weld point, you have a gradient adjustment point, and you have to mess with each one of these. The fewer you have, the easier it is. The faster it is to do elevations. Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering, I'd love to see like what you're doing as you're developing. If you could ever record a video, I just want to see how it's happening. Because normally you have to like purposefully create a weld. Like if I just started continuing laying track off of this point, it's not going to make a weld. See? It's seamless. But for some reason it's making welds for you. Like if I want to make a weld on purpose, I'll split the track and weld it. Otherwise, it's just the automatically generated welds every 1,000 meters. Yeah, so I'm kind of confused. Yeah, definitely record the next time you do this. So it's actually 1,000. So if I lay a 500-meter ribbon, and then I lay another 500-meter ribbon, you can see the entire length, that entire 1,000 meters, there's no weld. But then, once I continue laying from that 1,000 meter point, we got a weld point automatically generated. So, weld point every 1,000 meters, which is roughly, oops, where the hell was I? Over here. Which is roughly, I don't know, every 2/3 of a mile or something like that. Hey Dave, nice of you to join us. Yeah, we were praising him for even taking on this project, and he's getting so much better at the track laying. I complimented him before, and I'll continue to. Yeah. All right, so in 5 minutes we'll be ready to get this started and show what I wanted to show. I'm just perusing this. Dave, how does everything look and sound to you? So far, I haven't gotten any complaints as far as the stream goes. Yeah, it looks good. All right, so let me get back to what are the coordinates for Baltimore Pen? Was it 39.3 negative 76.61, I think? Yep. So now we're back at Biddle, milepost 94, and now we're at milepost 93. Perfect. So in 5 minutes we'll start. Does anybody have any questions before I begin that I can answer? Anything, root related, whatever. Says no, let's get it rolling. Yeah, we will in 4 minutes. I'm glad we had this time to talk and test through everything really quick. JG is asking, is there a way to see station platform information? How do you mean? Do you mean like a passenger information system that says next train, Acela Express 2158 en route to Washington? Do you mean that kind of stuff? As far as like information on the platforms? Track number. Well, the closest thing is here, I'll go over to Baltimore Pen really quick. So in the route, you have platform markers. So if you go into Object Tools, here, I think it's at the bottom somewhere. Where the hell is it? Oh, it's in here somewhere. And you put a platform marker, and you give the platform a name. So if I open up the 2D map and go back to Baltimore, when you lay that platform marker on the map, it'll appear as whatever you type in here. Baltimore Pen, track 6, track 7, etc. And when making scenarios, you can use those as waypoints for stopping points to unload and load passengers. I think that's what you're asking. Evan says, oh, by the way, the track rule is still Washington to Baltimore. No, it's not. That was one of the things I was going to bring up because I noticed, and I think I have a theory as to why you did this. I checked, and it's NEC track rule. I don't know if you can see that in the top right. So where I finished laying track, yeah, it's Washington-Baltimore track rule. But everything that you laid, from what I could tell, is NEC track rule. Which is fine. I mean, it's easily changed. No, you can change that kind of stuff in TS tools. But no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Alright, before we get started, I'll just answer Redonju's question or inquiry. So I've been experiencing an issue where I save the route, come back to it 2 weeks later, and most of the tracks become invisible. Yeah, so it sounds like the route somehow is getting corrupted. You can try clearing your cache, verifying Steam files, restoring an earlier backup of the route, hence our talk about route backups earlier. But I see that complaint a lot, where people go back into their route and they're like, oh, nothing changed, I just can't see the tracks anymore. Yeah, it's just a stupid bug with this game, unfortunately. Alright, so I think we're in a good spot to get started. Alright, so since the release of Washington to Baltimore at the end of December, Evan Powers, who's with us in here in the chat as Captain Ace, set out to start a project to extend that official Dovetail Games route to Philadelphia. A lot of people believe that Dovetail Games should have just done that from the onset and made a really long, really nice Northeast Corridor route. Frankly, that would have just taken way too much time. They don't have as many resources to dedicate to Train Sim 1 anymore, as more and more of their resources are being pooled into Train Sim World 2, which I think is completely fair. This game is dying, in my opinion. It's antiquated, to say the least. Regardless, it's still the only editor the most functional editor that we as developers have access to. So so the last station, Baltimore Pen, is right over here. I continued the track through the Union tunnels to Biddle Interlocking, milepost 94, and then ended it just before this curve at milepost 93. And this is where Evan continued laying track north to Philly. So I advised him to take the terrain height here and just set all the terrain to be level at that all the way to Philly and just lay all this new track flat. The reason for laying flat track as opposed to importing all the terrain first is because it makes it a lot easier to do precision track laying. If you have mountains and stuff and hills poking through as you're trying to lay track, you can't see what you're doing, so lay it flat and then adjust all the heights of the terrain in the track later. So the whole purpose of this video, this stream, is to look at what he's done so far and critique it, give him advice, and teach other people on proper ways to lay track and develop a route in general. So how I started this was looking at the track spacing. This area right around milepost 93 has very, very tight track spacing. I think the track centers are 3.8 meters apart. Now you'll notice, if you look in the track rule, the default track rule for this route has a parallel distance of 4.2 meters. Now if I tried, here I'm just going to rip a little bit of this up. If I try to use that default track rule to continue laying track from this point, you're going to see a problem. See how it's way further out than it should be? Because the track rule is not matching up to the track centers that I had laid in the route. If you go to lay this right now, you're going to get that. So, what I think Evan did in order to compensate for that was he started adjusting some of the curvatures on these tracks. Track 1 really, really stood out to me. So a little bit further back, he started, for some reason, I don't know why, doing some slight curvature to the right on track number 1. And what that would do is it would give it more spacing from the other tracks. I think he also did some really custom curve laying here to give the tracks more separation so that when you finally do get out to this point and you go to lay the track, it lines up. So it was an attempt at getting the track centers to match up to what it is in the track rule. Now I'm going to show you the proper way to go about doing that. So in the track rule, you have this value that I showed you previously, parallel distance. Now if you access the track rule and open it up in TS Tools, you're able to modify this value. We'll close the game, modify the value, and then relaunch the game. And then whenever you go to lay tracks side by side, they'll be separated by that new distance. So I know, because I laid the track in this area, that when I was doing this, the track centers were 3.8 meters apart. All right. So what I'm going to do real quick, actually I'm not going to save anything in here. I'm going to close out the game. In TS Tools, I'm going to change this value to 3.8. And I'm going to save. Now I'm going to go back into Train Sim World. I mean, not Train Sim World, oh my god. I got that on the brain. Train Sim 1. I'm going to reload it. Alright, sorry about that, guys. That was weird. Closing the game and then restarting it. OBS didn't like that. I had to completely close out OBS, like force quit it, because it wasn't responding at all. And then, restart the game, and then restart OBS, and then restart the stream. It's fine. We're good. We're good. We're good. No, it was not on your side, Dave. It was all my setup for whatever reason. I've never seen it do that before, but we're back. It only took a minute. Alright, let me get back to the chat real quick. So, hey, Chris. He says, hope all is well, Chief. Excellent work on what you're doing. Glad to see you back on Train Sim. Your skills and building are still on point. Keep up the great work. Thank you for the kind words, man. I really appreciate it. Alright, so we're back in the route. And we're back at Biddle, milepost 94, back at milepost 93. Perfect. So, now that all that crap is out of the way, I adjusted the track rule. So now the parallel distance between tracks is now 3.8 meters, which is what it is here. There are other parts of the route where it's wider, other parts are narrow like this. So now that we have that, we can properly do the extension north. Anyway, before I fix this, I just want to talk about it a little bit more. So for some reason, this little curve was put here before the rest of the tracks started curving, and I'm thinking, like I said before, my theory is that it was to get that track spacing back out to 4.2 meters, which is what the track rule is, and then continue on at a track spacing of 4.2 meters. Now, I don't know if in real life the tracks space themselves out like that after the curve. I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell. They look really close here. And then, I mean, they don't look that much further apart. No. Now, the spacing, I think, is still 3.8. Anyway. Close out that. So now I want to go to the track charts part of this, and taking the values that are in track charts and putting them into values that the game can understand. So if we look at these track charts, these are official Amtrak track charts. Ah, shit. OBS is being stupid. Give me a sec. There we go. I just had to readjust the source. You should see that now. Yep, and you do. So, these charts show milepost locations, the distance in feet between mileposts, the locations of undergrade and overhead bridges, the locations of signals, curves, the degree of curvature for the curve, the super elevation on that track, etc. Grade, like, goes downhill starting at the curve, stuff like that, and how much, and then speed limits and things like that. So these are track charts that Evan has access to and has been referencing when doing this precision track laying. So we see right here 1.98 degrees is the degree of curvature of the main curve for track number 3. Now I have an Excel spreadsheet that converts that value into the radius of curvature in meters that Railworks understands. So if we plug in 1.98, it's going to spit out a value of 882.1. So when you look at the radius of curvature, and I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's a very small number, small as in like small font. At the very, very bottom of the screen, when you hover over a piece of track, you'll see radius of curvature. I don't know if it's large enough for you guys to see on your screens. But anyway, where I got a calculation of 882.1, Evan started laying this curve with a radius of curvature of 3,810.2. That's a very shallow curve compared to 882. So the curvature is all over the place. After this next weld, he sharpens it drastically to a radius of 776.6, which is too sharp. The lower the number, the sharper the curve. At the next weld, he shallows it out to 908.3, which is closer to 882, but still too shallow. and then he sharpens it again to 767, which is too sharp. So he's going from sharp, shallow, instead of having a constant radius of curvature throughout. He's making little compensations because of other errors earlier in the curve laying process. And you want to try to avoid this if at all possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip up this curve. No offense, Evan. I'm going to rip this up, buddy. Alright. So we know the curve starts approximately here. I know from experience that the curve starts right around this overhead bridge. So the first step is going to be getting track 1 back to a point where it's even with the rest of these tracks. Actually, let me remove these little stubs. Alright. So I'm just going to select that one track. That's fine. I don't care about any of the other properties. Just going to line this up. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's close enough as possible. Actually, let me slice these so they're all nice and even. We got a nice starting point. Okay, great. So now I'll save. So the first step in laying a curve is getting to the right starting point. Now, by that, I mean... Wait, why is it taking so long to save? Come on. There we go. Wow. I thought for a second the game was going to frickin' crash. Alright, what I mean by getting to the right starting point is you can't be too far back and start laying the curve, or too far forward and start laying the curve. You got to get it just starting at the right point so that these curvature values end up looking proper in the game. So that is a lot of trial and error. So once you know the approximate area where your curve starts, you're going to just play around with numbers and remember these numbers too. And then play around with making the curve, and if it's not in the right spot, go back. I'll show you step by step. So I know that this curve needs to start somewhere around, I don't know, the beginning of the bridge, middle of the bridge. So I'm laying a tangent of 14 meters just to start out with. Now this is a rather sharp curve. And if I go to use the mainline preset right now, you can see that those purple lines go way too far to the right and don't follow the tracks. It's not curving sharp enough, quickly enough. So when that's the problem, you lower the track type. The next highest type is passenger. So we're going to try that. Remember that we just laid that tangent of 14 meters. So now, this is starting to look a lot better. The purple lines are resting on top of the track pretty flush. So what we're going to look out for now is the radius of curvature value at the very bottom of the screen. Remember before, in that Excel spreadsheet, we converted that 1.98 degrees of curvature for the main curve into radius of curvature in meters of 882.1, I believe. Let me look. 882.1, that's right. So I'm looking for that number. I'm moving my mouse back and forth until I get to 882.1. Now, it doesn't have to be like exact but I want to just be exact for you guys. So 882.1, great. Now when I continue laying my track, you can see this gray line, this series of gray lines that follow the track. This is your main curve. We did the spiral in, that gradual curving in. Now we have the main curve. This is the area of the curve that's of a constant radius and has constant super elevation. All right? That's the values represented on the track charts, the main curve, not the spirals. I think I might have gotten this the first try, unbelievable as that sounds. See how as I go throughout the entire curve, it's lining up so nicely. And then over by the end here, it starts to sway a little bit off to the left. So it's a little bit off center. So what that means is I need to readjust my initial tangent on each of these. I believe I went, if it's too far that way, one sec, let me look. Ah! I hate that sound. One sec, let me lay this again. So if it's too far off to the left, I need to cut it back a little bit. So instead of 14, we're going to do... Oh, we're so close. Let's do 13... Wait, no. I need to... Let me think. I need to make it... Yeah, let's try 13.7. Alright. It's 13.7. Oops. One sec, I screwed up. See, I didn't change it from mainline back down to passenger, so it screws up the entire curve. Alright. So now I'm good. You gotta get to 882. Oh, wait a minute, no. First we need to do the 13.7 tangent. I mixed that up. 13.7. 882. And you can see how this would take a while, right? To get a nice, perfect curve. That's one thing I feel has been kind of rushed on this project, is the track laying. So I'm always telling these guys, hey, make sure you take your time with the track. Make sure you get it done right. That looks really, really nice. It comes out like right on track, no pun intended. Pretty damn good. So now you need to play around with how long your main curve is before you exit the curve, and then lay your straight track to your next curve. So this is crucial. If I lay too short of a main curve, you can see as I come out, we're going to be going off way to the left here. And vice versa. If the main curve I lay is too long, we'll veer off to the right. It needs to be perfect. Yeah, like Evan just typed in, this process can take up to 20 plus times. Easy. Easy. So I'm going to start out with a value of like 400 for the main curve. Let's do that. 400.0. And remember these values too, so you can make adjustments. I sometimes have a notepad with me, or you could just jot it down in the notepad application on the computer or something like that. So we'll try that value. Before I do that, oh yes, before I get into this, I want to show you something about welds. Notice how this entire curve that we've laid so far has no welds, except for the very beginning of the curve, where the tangent meets the spiral, meaning where the straight track meets the part of the track that starts to curve. This is where you want a weld. You want your welds at the beginning of each curve and at the end of each curve. All of this weld stuff in the middle of the curve is unnecessary unless it's an extremely long curve. There are some curves that are longer than 1,000 meters, and it's inevitable. You're going to have welds in those curves. But, for the most part, welds at the beginning of the curve, and then a weld at the end. So let me just rip up this track. Just get to a point approximately where it starts to curve. I think Evan had it start curving right there. Okay, that's fine. Open up Google Maps overlay again. Like this. Make sure we have passenger selected, otherwise our spiral out will get all messed up. And we'll bring it out. Now what I'll do is I'll lay some track all the way down to the next curve, and you can already see the track is way off to the left, to where it's supposed to be. So, what that means is that I didn't make the main part of the curve long enough. So we started out with 400 meters. Let's go a little bit higher. Let's do like 402.5 or something like that. Making sure that we check passenger again. 402.5. 402.6 is fine. Bring it out. Now, Google Maps isn't perfect either. You may see that it's a little bit off at this point. Google Maps isn't perfect. Railworks implementation of curvature is not perfect. So you're just going to have to do your best to get it right and within the parameters of the track documents if you have reference material to go off of. All right. So now, once I get down to this point, now you can see it's too far off to the right, which means I laid the main part of the curve a little bit too long. So I did 402.6 there. Let's just do 402. 402 even. Making sure that, one sec before I do that. Making sure I tick passenger. I wish there was a way to set a default for that or something. 402, and this can take a while too. You gotta like really zoom in to get these really precise numbers. 402.0, perfect. Spiral out. 500-meter ribbon. Boom. That looks really good. That's like right on point, almost. So that's good. So now before we continue the next curve, I want to make sure that there's welds at the end of this curve now. So now you've got a weld at the end of this curve, beginning of the curve. The entire curve is encompassed between two welds. That's it. So now when I go to super elevate the curve, notice how the entire curve is being selected. It's going to select the track between the two weld points. So I can just select this and boom, super elevated. That's it. Properly super elevated curve. No cracks, no breaks, nothing. All right, it's making sense. It's good. Any questions so far? Before we get into the next curve, as another example. This next curve is tougher, I think. Because this is around bay interlocking, where the three main tracks start to just do their own thing. Split off in different ways. I'll wait a moment to get some questions. All right, if I see any questions pop up, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I'll start getting into this next curve. All right, so this next curve, let's look at the track docs. Right over here. So the tracks even start curving at different spots, so it seems. So like it appears here, and it might be wrong. It appears here that tracks 3 and 1 start curving at the same time, whereas track 2 starts curving a little bit later. Let's take a look in Google Maps first. Let me just set the opacity. Yep. It's kind of hard to tell here. It looks like they're sticking together pretty well up until this point. Like right about here at this cap hole, it starts to look like track 1 shallows out a little bit. And you can see that track separation a little bit. Yeah, they're all doing their own thing. So what I would do here is lay one track at a time. I would just lay one track at a time. Because they're all doing their own damn thing anyway. And then later on, just get them to reconverge. But I'll show you some other techniques too. Here, let me reduce the opacity on that. Amtrak fans asking, how do you access the track charts? Or is that something, not something for the general public? It's not something for the general public. You can sometimes find charts online, but these updated ones you're not going to. But if you can find reference material for your project, it's going to amplify the realism factor a million times. Okay, anyway, let's see what Evan did. So he started all 3 tracks at the same time, which is fine. And, oh yeah, we didn't plug in the radius of curvature. So 2.03 degrees for this curve on track 3. Okay. One sec. Where does that curve start and end? 2.03 degrees. And it seems to go to a straight piece before curving again. Let me look really quick. This area is a little bit confusing. I know that you got this little straight bit there. Oh yeah, and then there are signals over there. Okay. Interesting. Okay. We're just going to assume that this whole curve right here before that little straight piece is 2.03 degrees. So we'll plug that into the calculator. 2.03, 860. So his radius of curvature should be 860, and he's got 888, which is a little too shallow. And then it changes to 879, and then it changes to 846. A little bit all over the place, but honestly not that bad. Let me just rip this track up. So remember, the first step, oh, and we're going to be laying these tracks one at a time, by the way, because of their unique natures. They all just go in different directions anyway. So the trouble is going to be getting them to rejoin a little bit later, but I want to at least be able to do that. So let's lower that a little bit. Okay. So we're going to change this to 1 track, and we're going to go back to passenger setting because this is all still 60 mile an hour track. These curves are both 60 miles per hour. Rather sharp curves, about the same radius of curvature as the last curve. So we're going to use the passenger setting. Excuse me. So 860. You can already see that it's not curving fast enough. And the reason for that is the tangent before the curve goes too far. So I'm going to cut this back a little bit and try again. Still. So the curve starts a little bit further back here than I thought. And if you kind of look closely, you can see that the spiral is starting around the bridge. And I don't know how long the spirals are. I don't have that document. I don't even know if they maintain that information anymore, the length of the spirals. They probably do. So 860. And you can see as I try to get towards 860, the guidelines are going too far to the left, which means I need to add some length to this. So I'm going to chop it off here instead. Trial and error, guys. Name of the game. You can't get this. I mean, you can try and get it perfect the first time, but chances are you're not going to. So 860. Now, if I continue laying that from that point, it's curving off way too fast. So it's almost like 860 is too sharp of a curvature value for this curve. But I'm not going to give up yet. Let's keep playing around with it. Let's start curve like, I don't know, 5 meters further down. Okay. That looks a little bit better. Now, sometimes the track charts aren't perfect. They're like that last curve, that was a perfect example of where the track charts match up with what we see in Google Maps perfectly. It's not always going to be that way. Sometimes you got to come up with a different value. Maybe that's why Evan had to do 888 instead of 860, you know? Because it looks like 860 is a little bit too sharp. But we'll see. Ah, look at that. I started the curve a little bit later, and you can see it starting to really come together now. Still a little bit too sharp there, so what we're going to do is just add a little bit more to that tangent. So instead of 5, maybe I'll do 8. Let's try 8. That might be a little bit too aggressive, but trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. I want to drill that into you guys. Trial and error. 860.3. Okay, just wanted to double check the number. 860.3. Okay. And that seemed to be just slightly too aggressive. Slightly too aggressive. Maybe instead of 8, and this will be the last adjustment I make, because I think I've proven my point. We'll do 7.5. Right? I'll get to 860.3. Okay. Now that should be a nice compromise. Look at that. That's really nice, actually. Really nice. Just going to cut it back a little bit to give myself some more space for laying this last little bit before we bring it back to straight track. So I'm remembering this value, 78.8. More bit of main curve track. And we're going to bring it out. Just rip this up real quick. That's good. And now we get into our next curve. All right. I want to get these next couple curves on this one track done first, because it's going to play a crucial role later on into how these other tracks join back together. So, if we look back at the track charts, you will see that after that little straight bit that we just did, that little tangent, the next curve is 1.97 degrees, so almost the same. Excuse me. 1.97 degrees. If we throw that in the calculator, 886.5. Hey, Nick. Nice of you to join us, man. I thought you were at work today. Until 6. Anyway, so now we just need to figure out where this track starts curving again. And add a radius of 886.5. So it's not going to start curving right away. There is a little bit of a straightaway. It's not much. That's why this is called a reverse curve. You try to avoid these on the railroad if at all possible. You want to have a fair bit of straight track in between curves. So let's try 15 meters to start out with. Let's just start out with 15 meters. And it looks like that's too much. It's going off to the left, too much, more than I'd like. So we'll cut that back to 10 meters. That lines up a lot better. Let me remove this just so I can see better. It's kind of tough to see the Google Maps overlay in this area. It's like too bright. All right, and it looks like a decent start. So I'll remember that value. 98.1. Now this curve looks like it goes straight from like spiral to spiral. Like it doesn't even really have a main curve. It's that short of a curve. So we're not even really going to worry too much about the track value. 988. Wait, it ended up being 988. Oh, did it? Alright. Then I gotta fix that. because it's not supposed to be 988, it's supposed to be 886. So if I do 886, here I'll just force that instead of just going off looks. 886. Yeah, see, it goes way too far off to the right, which means what? What does that mean? Did I lay this too far? Did I lay it not far enough? Let me just try a value of 5. And then go into 886. Ooh. It's not looking that good. It's still going way off to the right. Maybe this curve has shorter spirals, so maybe we have to try the freight option. Yeah, we're using easements. Dave. Always. Always using easements. Let's try the freight preset, because maybe this curve has shorter spirals. Hence why we're not getting it right. Alright, so because we're using shorter spirals now, we're going to have to increase our tangent before the curve. So let's go with that 15 that we originally estimated. And then we'll do, what was it, number 886. I'm just going to get pretty close to that number, but not exact. Oh yeah. It's like going way off to the right. Okay, so with the freight setting, a tangent of 15 isn't far enough, it seems. So I'll go 20. Yeah, like right around 20. And then we'll do 886 again. Or right around 886. Damn. That is a short-ass curve. Wow, that's crazy. But the curve keeps going all the way out there. I don't know about this. This is weird. Phil says, maybe increase your tangent between curves. The engineers used to tell me, yeah, a minimum of 100 feet, typically. So, because of that, maybe we'll have to adjust how this curve comes out. Because we're using the passenger setting, maybe it's got a shorter spiral. And maybe we come out of the curve a little bit earlier. I know it's a really tight reverse curve here at Bay. But instead of using the passenger setting, if we use the freight setting, we're going to have to increase the length of our main curve, but it might get us out of the curve quicker so we can make a longer tangent. I'll go back to freight. Start with a value of like 100. Yeah, let's just start out with 100 for now. Might not be enough. Actually, I gotta go a couple more. Let's do like 102. So sometimes you can have curves that have different length spirals on each end. So you can do that too. There's no real way to know that that is an issue until you run into something like this. Alright, so now we're out of the curve. And now we can do a much longer tangent. Much longer tangent. So whereas before I was hitting like 25 before I could get to the bridge, now I'm at like 95. So this is much, much better. So now we can start our curve earlier, if we have to. So I'm just trying to get a good idea of where this curve is actually starting. It looks to be starting like right about here, so let's go with a tangent of 50 meters. And going to increase this back to passenger. 886, 886. That's our magic number. Just gonna get around that number. Oh, that's looking a lot better. It's already looking better. But it's still... Alright. Let's cut this back a little bit. So instead of 50, let's try 40. Oops, passenger. A lot of trial and error. And I know it can be a little bit boring, but this is what you gotta do if you want to lay precision track. 886. Now this may be a case where the track charts are just simply off, because I keep consistently getting, like going way too far off to the right. Or we could try the mainline setting instead of passenger. Let's try that. Let's do a tangent of 30 and go into the mainline setting and see what that yields us. Oh, wow. No, that's too much. Way too much. Passenger is going to be our best bet. Alright. I'm going to do something a little crazy and make a really long tangent. Let's go with 60 this time. Maybe that's our problem. Maybe the tangent's not long enough. 886. 886. Now it looks like it's a little bit off, but it may actually end up working out in the end. It's getting closer, but I feel that the track charts are a little bit off here. I've tried so many different combinations, and I can't get that 1.97 degree of curvature to work here. I can't get it to work. So this is where you improvise a little bit. And a lot of times you have to do this as a route builder. So I'm going to stick with a tangent of, let's do a nice middle ground number of 45 meters. All right. Now, since 886 was a little bit too sharp, I'm going to try something a little bit more shallow, like 910. Let's try 910 and see how that plays out. Or 911, that's fine. It's getting better, but it's not quite there. So now, I'm going to try 940. Let's try 940. 940. It's getting there. It's really getting there. Still not close enough. Let's do 1,000. Almost there. Let's do 1,100. And this is a pretty big deviation from what the track charts say. So it could be that I'm just doing something wrong. I'm not starting the curve in the right place. Maybe the track rule doesn't have finely tuned enough properties for this particular curve situation. These types of things are tough, and you have to sacrifice a little bit of realism in these cases in order to just make it work. So let's go with 1,100. And it sucks. It sucks that you gotta sometimes do that, but I mean, you've seen it firsthand. Alright, so 1,100 is too much. It's veering off to the left. So let's do 1050. Alright. Oops. What did I do wrong there? $10.38. You guys get the point. I hope. I don't want to drag this on too much. But I do want to get this right. Let's do 1060. 1060. Wait, no. I'm going in the opposite direction now. I want to lower the value. I want it to be sharper, not more shallow. So 1015. That's looking a lot better. Nice. All right, we'll stick with that for now. That took way more than 20 tries. That took way more than 20 tries. And it took making unequal spirals on this curve to make it work. But now we've got an issue. Because I was so focused on that whole thing, we've got a weld here instead of where we should have a weld at the beginning. So you got to keep that kind of stuff in mind. As you're starting a curve, once you find your the spiral in that you're going to be sticking with, the point where you're not going to be fucking with this piece of track anymore, immediately come back, split, weld. Because now you can see I've got this weld point here that I've got to contend with. And that's not pretty. That weld shouldn't be there. So once you figure out exactly the length of the spiral and where the curve starts and all that, go back, split, weld. All right? It's a good learning experience. I wasn't paying attention there. So that was good that you were able to see that. And then do the same thing here. Once you have this curve done, so this is where the curve ends, split, weld. There you go. And then the same thing here. We got this curve pretty damn good, I think. Maybe a little bit messy, but yeah, it's still a little bit off. But that's fine. You can always go back and just relay it a little bit. Make it go a little bit more shallow. Like 1022 or something. 1022. So, in my opinion, the group has been laying the track too quickly. For you to have gotten the mainline track from Baltimore to Philly in the time that you did, I feel that it was rushed. Take your time with this. We're not on a deadline. This is all hobby stuff that we're doing. We're all hobbyists. We're not getting paid to do this. Except in my case, I was paid by Dovetail Games. But then again, I was on a deadline, so that's different. That's entirely different. There's no deadline with this. So take your time. Get better with the tools. Attention to detail. Like you saw that little slip up back there where I didn't do the weld once I got the spiral right. Things like that. Just take your time. Take your time. Make sure it conforms to the track documents the best you can. Oh yeah, this is looking good now. See if it stays on course all the way to the next curve. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's nice. That's real nice. Sweet. So now that that's in a final state, you come on back and you ensure that at the tangent to spiral point, you do your split, weld. Split, weld. Now it'll become increasingly more time consuming once you get all of these tracks laid and getting them to be rejoined back down here over by, what is it, the point and river interlockings or whatever. Here's how I would kind of approach all of that. I would try your best to make this track parallel to this one, like perfectly parallel. It looks like they're perfectly parallel and perfectly spaced. I mean, it appears that way. Up until where they start curving anyway. But all these tracks need to be laid individually because of how they have their own behavior. Alright, any questions on this stuff? I'm not happy about that weld. While I take a sip of my drink, I'll see if any questions are coming in. Yeah, Evan is agreeing with me. He thinks the potential reason for so many welds in his work is that he's getting so hyper-focused on the curve, you completely forget about the welds. How do you mean, Evan? Can we get a look at the main line? We have been the entire time. Or do you mean like getting a train down on it and... Zoom to a different area? Alright, where do you want me to look? I'll go anywhere you want. Near Gunpow? Let me look this up. Gunpowder. Gunpowder River Bridge latitude. 39.23. Negative 76.21. Is that what it is? That's not right. That's not right at all. Bing failed me. 39.41. Let me try that. 39.41. Oops, 76.39. If anybody finds better coordinates, let me know. Because these are garbage. These are complete garbage. Oh, wait a minute. I think I found it. Or around there. Let me... In all caps, he screams, "You must type exactly 5 digits." Is that true? Alright, then get me coordinates. Because I would use route markers if we had them, but we don't have route markers right now for this. I feel like a fool right now. I have no idea where the bridge is. I'm an idiot. Oh, crap. Yeah, somebody get me some coordinates. Alright, there we go. 39.38598. I've been able to get pretty lucky with a couple digits after the decimal. Negative 76.35.023. Is this the bridge? Oh, okay. So, Evan, what did you want me to look at here? So this is Gunpow interlocking. You just want me to look at the interlocking? I mean, there's a unique curve right near it, he says. Unique curve. South of it or north? I think north. It's like a really shallow curve or whatever, just north of the bridge. Yes, okay. So I think I know what curve you're talking about. So you have this curve right here, and then... Oh, yeah, okay. I see that little guy right there. I remember when you first started this project... south of the bridge? Am I south of the bridge right now? No, I'm north of the bridge. Do you mean this curve, or do you actually mean for me to go south? Yes, south. Okay, so we're not talking about that curve. Okay. What about this curve? Does it adjust the radius throughout. It's a compound curve. Like it's not a consistent radius. Is that what you mean by unique? While you answer that, I'm just going to look at the track chart. Let me get rid of that useless information. Trying to find that bridge. Track charts. Okay, so Gunpow. Milepost. What milepost is that at? 80. Right where the track splits into four, there's a really shallow curve, milepost 79.72. Oh, okay. Wow, and that's actually right where the signals are. Oh, okay, perfect. Let's take a look at that. So let's find the signals. Right here, signal bridge, right here. Oh, this is disgusting. And I can see why you're confused. The Google Maps is all screwed up, I think. Unless there's a track that abruptly ends right there. No. Track 3 continues. That's a disgusting split in the imagery. You see that? That's like a really... That's gross. Okay. Yeah, don't get too hung up on something like that. But I see this little curve you're talking about here. Okay. So, I do see these little adjustments. So, like, look at track 3, for instance. It curves... Here, let me go from this perspective. It curves to the right at a degree of curvature of 0.33. So I plug that in there, 0.33. And I'll go back to the track dock, and then it goes straight for a little bit, and then it adjusts back at a curvature of 0.24. This is a tough one, because all these tracks start curving individually, but they still need to come back together parallel. So is it really worth going the effort of laying all these individually and then bringing them back together and everything when it looks like they're curving at the same rate anyway? I think not. So I would keep them all curving at the same, even though they do show slightly different values in the track charts. It's just figuring out exactly where to start curving. So, in my opinion, I would start curving exactly where you did, right after the switch point, kind of. Not like right in the middle of where the tracks are starting to split at the switch, but right where you did. At this point, this other track will become its own independent track anymore. It won't be part of that frog anymore. So good choice on starting the curve there. I did notice that you started curving the tracks at different spots, which is fine because per the track charts, that is correct. Track 3, for instance, starts curving way before track 2, or even track 1 for that matter. Track 1, it barely even looks like it adjusts at all. Oh, that's the track that it splits off of. Okay, I get it. Wait a minute. Yes. Yeah, so, oh no, that's track alpha, and then you laid track 1. You didn't lay track alpha. This is track 1 that you laid, and you didn't lay track A yet. Okay. Got it. So, I think you started laying the curve for track 2 in a nice spot. Track 3's curve starts earlier. This looks right. You're on the right track. No pun intended. I keep saying that. But the radius of curvature is way off. So we could see in here 0.33. Plug that into the calculator, we get 5292, where you did 12,000. So I would play around with that a little bit more. My advice to you would be to it's tough. It's really tough because of how it gets cut off here. Lay this out in Google Earth beforehand, because Google Earth allows you to place your own path markers, and you can actually export those path markers and display them in the game. It's a really crappy display. There's a button down here. I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor around it. It's called route markers, and I actually generated those when I was laying the track for Washington to Baltimore. And it took the paths that I had laid previously in Google Earth, so I knew that they were right, and then overlays them on the terrain. And it's a really thin line, so it's hard to see, and you can't really make it thicker, unfortunately. I wish they would expand upon that tool. But it does allow you to show paths that you lay in Google Maps or Google Earth. So you can minimize the effects of crap like that. Where is it? At the signal bridge. Where was it? Or it split off at the signal bridge and like sliced off the part of the map. Wherever that was. Down here somewhere. Over here. Yeah, right here. Where it just completely cuts it off. I mean, I don't get that at all. Yeah, that's really bad. Jesus. Do your best. It's not going to be perfect because of this. It's not going to be perfect at all. Just try your best, make it work the best you can. You've got a fair bit of straight track before it starts curving to where you can try to correct it, but it's not going to look right no matter how you do it. Thanks Google Maps for being shitty. But yeah, thanks for bringing that one up. That's a tough situation to contend with. Let's take a look at the curve right after Newark heading south. Alright, you're gonna have to get me coordinates again. I ain't doing that search again. They give me a bunch of crap. Maybe I'll make a tutorial on how to do the route markers. You're probably going to want to redo a lot of this track anyway. So maybe I could help you generate route markers before that. So you could use those and not have to worry so much about looking at the Google Maps overlay to keep you on course. Nigel, when was a third track added around Newark? I don't. Has there been a construction project around there or something? I don't know. 39.66972 negative 75.75448. Okay. Ooh. So it's a 4. Okay, no, that looks fine. 4-track main. Now you want me to look at the curve right after Newark heading south. So this curve? Isn't this over by was this milepost 40? Davis interlocking? Isn't this over by Davis? Maybe open up the charts while you type what you want me to look at about this curve. Davis is after Newark heading north. Okay, I mean, it's right around Davis. Alright, so I am in the right area. I think that's milepost 40. 40. Newark, Davis. Okay. So the first curve south of Newark. Okay. Oh, that looks like a really standard curve. It's a really long curve, though. I mean, it looks to be about a mile long, maybe even a little bit longer than a mile. Okay. What do you want to know about this curve? Other than it being long. It's not a compound curve, which is nice. It's a constant radius throughout, so it should be really simple to lay. Might take a while because of just how long it is. So if you're laying it from the perspective of track 1, or either track 3, it doesn't matter, 0.48 degree of curvature. 3638. All right, could you just take a look at it radius-wise? I feel there were only a couple of curves that gave me a real lot of trouble. All right, well, I'll look at it from the southern perspective because you were laying this like on your way north, so this would be where you started laying the curve. All right. What did I say the number was? 3638. So far, this is close. 3564 is really close to 3600 once you start getting into these higher numbers. No, that's close. If that number worked for you, then great. Let's just see if you maintained it the entire time. Let me turn off this overlay. 3564, yeah, you're maintaining it. Still maintaining it. Still maintaining it. 3564. Dude, you nailed it. My only thing is, were you laying this with the mainline preset? The spirals are really short. That's my only criticism on this. The spirals are super short. Like if I was, let me try this. If I was laying this curve on the spiral out, oh wait, no, it is. That's so weird. I feel like I feel like it would be a longer spiral to get out. I guess not. Oh shit. Okay, no, you did fine. There's nothing wrong with this curve. Let me super elevate it real quick. My only concern is that the spirals are too short, but no, you did great. I mean, what? It's a 60-meter spiral. That's decent. I would expect a longer one though, like an 80 or a 90-meter spiral for something like this. Yeah, great job. Really great job on this curve. My only criticism would just be the welds. Just minimizing the welds, but you got to weld at the end of the curve, and I think you got a set of welds at the very beginning of the curve, so uh, the curve is isolated at least, which is good. Nice. Hey Nick, nice of you to join us. Yeah, a little bit late, but you can always watch it again at another time. Just make sure you start it like a half hour in. Maybe I'll cut it out. Because we were just doing some testing the first half hour, making sure that everything looked good and sounded good, and it appears that it does. Had a little bit of a faux pas about like 20-ish minutes in. But for the most part, everything's been running smooth. Any other curves you want me to check out, man? Any other spots that you're worried about? And then we can start talking about terrain. MP 55. 55, okay. Can you get me coordinates? Hey, Justin, what's up, man? Nice of you to join us. What's going on at milepost 55? Let's take a peek. 55. 55. Okay. So, ooh. Yeah, there's some interesting curvature over there, that's for sure. But not that bad. I mean, they all pretty much have the same curvature values. Where's this near? Do I know? I don't know where this is near. Oh, Bacon Interlocking, okay. Yeah, just get me coordinates, and I'll teleport there now. That's a really long curve. That's also, like, almost 2 miles. That's even longer than the one we just looked at. Alright, cool. Let me go there. 39,601,62,75,87,593. Okay, great. So, where does this start? Am I looking north or south? North. Okay. So, wait a minute. Are you sure this is milepost 55? Oh, the curve goes so light that it looks straight. That's not curving. Let me see if I can find a milepost in the overlay. Oh, there's a signal bridge there, and that looks like a milepost right there. Let me see if I can find a milepost next to a bridge in the charts. 55. Yep. 55, and then you got a signal bridge right here. That's a curve? Really? Does that look right? Does this look right to you? It doesn't look right to me. No, this isn't right. I mean, that is a milepost and that is a signal bridge. But this is a 2-track main. This is a 3-track. That doesn't make any sense. Okay. Yeah, just get the right set of coordinates. No, these track charts were published in August of last year. No, so he's got the wrong area. Sorry, he'll get me the right coordinate pair. It's interesting. It would be really helpful to have route markers just to teleport around. Yeah, take your time, Evan. It's all good. Maybe I can find it just by... Wait, where's Elkton? In relation to all this, where's Elkton? You got Bacon there. Oh, Elkton. Is it 45? Retrack main. Oh, yeah. Because I was at milepost 45. So I need to head south, not north. And I'm heading south. Okay. So now it's becoming a 2-track main. This might be it. I got it. Yeah, milepost 55 is what we were finding, or trying to find, Dave. Yeah, I got it, Evan. I just had to go 10 miles south. Sweet. So this is where it starts. So if we look at the charts, 55, let's get back to 55. Actually, let's start down here, because you were from the south lying north. Ooh, a lot of welds. Holy shit. Yahoo. Okay. So you started right here, this curve right here, 0.14 degrees of curvature. Let's just plug that in real quick. 0.14, 12,474. That is a shallow ass curve. 12,474. So you've got it going at 8,000, so it's too sharp of a curve. 8,708. And who knows, maybe, oh no, now you're shallowing it out to 11,100. Still too sharp though. So from what I can gather, you probably started the curve too late. The tangent leading up into the curve is too far. If you cut back the tangent a little bit and start the curve earlier, that shallow of a curve should work out for you. I can't guarantee that because of the issues we ran into with the numbers or that curve at Bay. You saw how we had to adjust those numbers because the numbers in the charts just weren't working out. It could be the case here too. But I would say start the curve earlier and try to stick to that 12,400. Yeah, I get it, man. Yeah, the charts might be off. And sometimes the game just doesn't play nice with some of this precision track shit that we try to do. That's another thing that I wanted to show you in the track rule. So the way the tracks curve is based on the maximum speed tolerance programmed into the track rule. So for instance, the mainline track setting, the way that does its curvature for the spirals and all that is based on a maximum speed of 120 miles per hour. So I believe, what's the maximum speed between, I mean, on this section? Is it 135 or 130 at some point? 130, I think. So you could mess with some of these values and get different results as far as how the spirals are generated, and maybe you could get some more accurate results. 125? Okay. So yeah, you could change that to 125, and it will get slightly different results. You'll notice, like, if you change this from 120 to 130, that the spirals will take longer to get sharper. That's what that is. In the lower numbers, the spirals take less distance to get sharper. That's what it is. The transition from straight to curved is longer or shorter depending on these numbers. So that's something you could play around with too. I've never done that. That's really advanced stuff. I've never had to bother doing it, but it is an option. Anyway, so you started out too sharp, and then you make it more shallow, but it's still too sharp. If anything, I would recommend that you do try to make it a constant radius of curvature, even if the number doesn't match the track documents. Try to make it a constant rate of curvature. Oh, you can hear a train going around my house now. It's a regional going 125. Anyway, yeah, just try to make it constant number, even if it doesn't match up with the charts. But anyway, it looks pretty good. The tracks look like they are together. Won't the train sideswipe? No. It might look that way. What is it set to right now? So these tracks are 4.2 meters apart, which would be, what, like 13 feet? And that's pretty standard around here. Like, I know the track centers in my area, right next to the corridor here, can get as low as like 12.5 feet. So no, the trains aren't going to sideswipe here. Anyway. Oh, and then you make it sharper again. Yeah, so I guess you had to compensate for something. Like maybe it was veering off a little bit too much to the right, so you had to bring it back in. Yeah, just try to, next time you go to relay this, just make it a constant radius, even if it doesn't match up with the charts. So you get out of the curve, and this is a long-ass curve. By the way, this is insane. Okay. Oh, you actually kept it curving. You didn't come back to tangent. So that's another thing. It doesn't just continually go into the next curve. There is a small tangent. Even on this other track too, there is a small tangent. So try to try to replicate that if you can, because you just have it going at a radius of 15,000 all the way up into the next curve. Anyway, next curve is 0.52, 3358. Yeah, you're making this one too sharp as well. That's all. A lot. I mean, it still looks fine for the most part, but too sharp. And then you have the small tangent there. Actually, that's a really tiny tangent. And then 1.1 degrees. 1587. And you're going a little bit shallow there. 1750. But overall, not bad. Just a lot of welds, but you're going to be working on that, I know. Not bad. Dude, I would just relay the entire route. And just take your time. Don't rush this. Oh, Nick. So, no. The terrain isn't like this in real life. So what I had him do was where I finished laying the track for Washington to Baltimore, take that height that the track is at the end of the route and apply it to all the way to Philly, and then just lay all of that track flat. Because it's easier to lay track flat than it is to lay it on already sloping terrain. Yeah, we haven't even imported the terrain in this area yet. Yeah. All this will change, believe me. Once the track is in a final state, once everything's laid and all that, then you import the terrain data, and then you start sloping the track. So that's what I want to talk about next. Unless anybody has any questions before I start talking about elevation adjustments. Yeah, I would redo the route. Yeah, Evan, definitely redo it. Go very, very slow. Take your time. Check your work. Make sure the welds are good. Try a bunch of different combinations of tangent lengths and switching between passenger and mainline and all that kind of stuff. Definitely. It seems like you rushed it. And I get it. You got a lot of stuff on your plate. But people have been waiting for a long time. They're going to keep waiting. Just do it right. And you're learning a lot. You're learning a lot, man. You're kicking ass, like we've been saying the entire time. There's no deadline for this. You're not getting paid. There's no donations coming in. So there's no true incentive to rush on this, you know? Just post frequent updates to people, let people test things out, ask questions. You take constructive criticism well, so that's good. Yeah, you don't have to rip it up. And as the community, I expect nobody to say, "Oh, when is this expected to be released? When is it going to be done? Oh, when is this going to be done? When is that going to be done?" It's whenever it's ready. That's the answer. When it's ready. All right. So, any other questions before I start talking a little bit about once the track's in a final state, how you proceed? I'll just wait a moment for any questions. I'm just going to pour myself a drink. All right. Doesn't seem like there's any questions. Yeah, take your time, Dave. Yes, exactly. All right. So, let's get back to Baltimore. 39.30. This one I kind of have memorized. 76.61. Yeah, you can hear that ambient noise. Alright, let's get back up to where the track ends. Alright, this is where I continued off where the route ended. So, the terrain is correct all the way up to this point, at which point it continues north completely flat. To then adjust track height, the elevations, reference the documentation. So we're going to go back up to milepost 93. 93, 93. Okay, perfect. So you have the gradient section right here. And this is the curve that we're dealing with. So right about where the curve starts, maybe slightly before, but right in that general area, we have a vertical curve transition going down. We're going down at this point at a rate of 0.32%. So that's our gradient. In game, there are tools to check for that gradient. But first, we're going to set up our point where the vertical curve starts, where the curve transitions from, I don't know, it looks like a pretty level track to me. I mean, it is going down a little bit, to going down even more. So, where's that? If you click on that little, I don't know what you call that tool. It just looks like a little protractor or something. Yeah, protractor, I think, is the name of the tool. You'll see these gradient adjustment points. And every weld point has a gradient adjustment point associated with it. That's why I'm so hard on these guys about welds, because the more welds you have, the more times you're going to have to manually adjust the track gradient in order to make things work properly. There are a lot of auto-generated gradient points that are not associated with welds. You'll see those. You can literally left-click those and delete them if you wish. You cannot delete the ones that are on welds. That's why they're so troublesome. If you could delete them, then fine. But you can't get rid of them. If I left-click on that and press delete, nothing's happening. All right. So before I adjust anything, I like to clean up the general area, and it looks like it's cleaned up. We have the changes on that weld, and then changes on this weld. We're pretty good. So, now we need to figure out where exactly it starts to change. And you can kind of see these two vertical lines that indicate approximately where the vertical curvature is. So this is a pretty short vertical curve. It's not transitioning too sharply. I mean, it is a sharp transition, but it's not going that much more downhill. So it's barely noticeable. But it's going to be right before the curve. Now, you might notice these series of horizontal lines in this area. These do correspond to actual elevations. So I don't have Google Earth installed to get the current track height in this area, but I can look at where I finished. 20, let's just call it, what is it? 27 meters. 27 meters, okay. I want to convert that to feet because these track charts are in feet. 88.5 feet above sea level, all right? So if we go back into the track charts, you can pretty much infer that this horizontal line right here in this area, that's representative of 90 feet, all right? And I don't know the scale, whether that drops down by 20 feet, or it's probably 20 feet, so this line is probably 70 feet above sea level, etc. And it's different for each of the pages. Each of the pages ends up having a different scale associated with the gradient. So right around this point, it looks to be 89 feet, something like that. So right before the curve. It's right about here-ish. right about here-ish. So you can manually add gradient adjustment points. So I know that at approximately this point, oh, and by the way, I did that by holding down Control and just moving my mouse to the right. You can manually add your gradient adjustment points, and this is going to be where our vertical curve starts. Okay? Everything's constant up to this point, and then everything's going to go downhill a little bit further over here. So now we need to make the area from that point to this next set of adjustments to be going downhill at a percentage of 0.32%. I'm just looking at the chat real quick. Evan's asking, Brandon, I'm open to anything, but do you think I should recheck every curve's value before ripping everything up? I think you should just rip everything up because you're going to have a lot of trouble if you say, oh, this curve's good, but this curve's crap, so I'm just going to merge these two curves together. I think you're going to have a lot of trouble merging everything together that you find. I would just start over, especially because of the weld situation. You're going to have a hard time. Even if a curve looks good, all these welds need to be dealt with too. Anyway, so between that point where the vertical curvature starts to change and this point, we need to be going down 0.32%. So I'm going to Control, left click all of these. And this is really, really fickle. You got to make sure that both sides of the track on these are selected. And it's very hard to tell. Oh, it's not letting me select these properly. I might have to do one at a time. So anyway, if you highlight over this track, you'll see that the gradient is uphill 0.1. So we want to make it go downhill 0.3. So you have to like adjust it and then look. And I got 0.3 there. What really sucks is that you can't get like more decimal points afterwards. That's one thing I want really bad. If I want to get 0.32, I have no way to tell if I'm getting 0.32, other than doing math, and I don't want to do math. I don't want to take the distance and do like that whole rise over run form calculation to figure all this out. I don't want to do that. So I'm just gonna do a wild guess and say, hey, this is now at 26.88. And up here, it's 27.16. So it is going downhill. Now, here's a really cool trick to make all of these adjustment points completely the same. Instead of clicking and dragging and manually adjusting all of them. You can set the terrain height. The tracks are always going to be half of a meter above whatever the terrain height value is. Yeah, Evan, you can always just rewatch all of this for the terrain stuff. Thank you for joining me, by the way. I hope you learned a lot. And thank you for taking constructive criticism well. Tracks are always half of a meter above the terrain. And this gradient adjustment point is at 26.88. So if I snap the terrain to this track, the terrain should be 26.38. Let's test that. Snap to track. I'm going to snap it. And if I highlight right there, oh, it's kind of hard to tell because the other tracks are uneven. I know that the terrain height I want here is 26.38. Luckily, I can do that, and I can get to those granular decimal points. So 26.38, I'm going to set that level terrain in the entire area, go back, open all these gradient points. I'm going to left click and press L. See that? When you take a gradient adjustment point and you press L, it's going to snap it to the terrain. And you'll notice now that track is at 26.88. Perfect. It's exactly the same height as this other track. click L, click L. They're all at 26.88 now, and if you look at all the tracks, 1 second. Are these not even? Yeah, these aren't even. 1 sec, I gotta fix that. 27.16. So 20, this is where I need to do math. 27.16 minus 0.5, yeah, 26.66. So I'll set the height of this track to be 26.66. Level that out. Click. Oops. Click L, 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 L. Now if I look at all these tracks, all of them now have an even downhill slope of 0.3%. And now that's the beginning of your gradient change. But now you have this point, which was previously pretty much level, and now it's transitioning to going downhill. How do you handle that? You need to smooth the gradient. Now, if you look at the track charts, you can get a decent idea of how long that vertical curve is, i.e., how long it takes for that transition from nearly flat to going downhill a bit takes. I'm not going to get too crazy here. You could kind of use some of the milepost measuring scales to figure out approximately how long that vertical curve is. I'm just going to guess 100 meters or something, just something arbitrary. So I'm going to take my select tool and I'm going to highlight where I'm going to start measuring where the gradient adjustment point is. I'm going to go 50 meters out. All right, and that's approximately here. Now I'm still having the select tool open. I'm going to click and drag across, click and drag across all my tracks. Now I'm going to measure 100 meters down the track. Actually, it's not going to be 100 meters because I got 4 tracks selected. You're going to see a cumulative number of all the tracks, so it's going to be 400 meters you're looking for down at the bottom. So your gradient adjustment point's in the middle, 50 meters on each side, and then you press the smooth gradient button. Now what that's going to do is it's going to create a whole series of gradient adjustment points, gradually going from what you have on this side to what it is now on this side. And if you went over this with a train, it would be nice and smooth, and there wouldn't be any bump. All right? That's how you do gradients. Very basic example, because it can get a lot more complicated when you're doing interlockings, and on the crossovers, there's gradient changes. I had quite a bit of that in Washington to Baltimore. Just look at Grove interlocking, or even Bowie interlocking for that matter. Yeah, some gradient changes in the middle of the interlocking, it's a fucking mess. So you just continue that whole process all the way down the line, and it's pretty time consuming, especially because let's say you're making a gradient adjustment here and the track separates. That's a glitch that actually exists in the editor. It's not always going to be as seamless as how I made it seem. Sometimes you'll make a gradient adjustment on a weld and it will separate the track, and you go over it and there's a bump, and you're going to have to manually go back and tweak that, and it could break other things too. So you're going to have to do frequent testing with your trains to make sure that everything is smooth. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about with respect to track gradients. Does anybody have any questions on that? Yeah, that's all I think I really wanted to talk about tonight. So yeah, it looks like Evan's gonna just relay all this track based on all of the feedback I gave tonight, which is the right move. definitely take your time. And I already agreed to lay the track over here in Philly. So so this is South Pen Interlocking. Once he gets the track up to this point, then I'm going to take over and I'm going to do the entirety of Philadelphia Terminal. I already agreed to do that. Lower level, upper level, all the way up to Division Post, I would think, and maybe a little bit beyond. So yeah, I'll take care of all this stuff. This is pretty complicated because there's a lot of different hills and slopes and stuff, especially when you transition from the lower level to the upper level. It's going to be a bit of a bitch. That's putting it mildly. But yeah, I'll do that for him. Should be fun. All right, before I end the stream, does anybody have anything else? While you got me here, any questions, any concerns about root development? Anybody interested in becoming a root developer, but you don't really know where to start? Anything at all? I'll give it a minute while I have some sips of my drink. All right. Doesn't really look like there's anything else. You guys know where to find me. I think most of the people that joined the stream tonight are in the Facebook group or Discord, or I know somebody even posted a link to it in the Dovetail Games forums. Somebody posted it there too, so hopefully we got some viewers from that forum too. But yeah, just hit me up on Facebook or the Dovetail Games forums if you got any questions or concerns about root building or this project in general, and I'll get back to you. Alright, guys, have an excellent rest of your night. Take care. Oh, what's the Facebook group? So if you just do a search, Red Donju here, let me just type it in really quick. Chat. Yeah, just do a search for that and request to join. We got almost 900 members now. Pretty good sized group of both developers and enthusiasts. So yeah, we'd love to have you. Thanks for joining us tonight. But yeah, if there's nothing else, guys, I'm gonna end the stream. Take care.